Hello, and welcome back to the wonderful world of career counseling. Our topic today is the search for actual information about occupations. So you have to imagine that you've proceeded far enough with a client that they've identified some occupation or group of occupations that pique their interest a little bit. And however you've done so, this may be that they've come in with something that dropped into their mind through some outside force. It might be something that was suggested by the results, the feedback from an interest inventory, a values survey, or some sort of ability test. But now you've got this problem. They want to know about it because they don't know anything about it. So where do you go? That again is our topic of the day. So here we go. And again, this is part of the job of a career counselor. And naturally, it helps if you know a fair amount about the structure of occupations in America and all that sort of thing. Some of that can get pretty dry, admittedly. So I'm just going to zero in today on a few useful resources. So look, in the old days, up to maybe 20 years ago or so, career counselors, people who did a lot of career counseling anyway, would have these, offices with a bunch of file cabinets, and you'd pull out the drawer, there'd be Pendaflex folders, and, each one would be labeled for some occupation, and you'd pull out brochures, that were published by the professional or trade association, and you'd have shelves of books up that would have information in them and all that. What's obviously changed in the last quarter century is that most of this information is now available on the internet. And so although you might still find some value in having physical brochures, the PDF file of the brochure in your computer is just as useful as having 50 or 100 of them sitting in a cabinet. So what are you going to do with your client now? In the first place, they should always, this is kind of obvious, they should always check out the official websites of whatever trade association or professional association is involved. So whether they're interested in becoming an electrician or a psychometrist or an actuary or a firefighter, then there's going to be at least one, sometimes two rival organizations, which will have websites up and have a lot of information about how you get to be one and what you do once you are one, and some information about employment trends and so forth and so on. Mind you, that information will be skewed a bit in the direction of making the occupation sound good, because these are people who want to promote their work, but they're extremely useful resources. So you do need to have a little bit of critical judgment here, and you hope that your client will as well. Particularly important here is not so much the official site of an electricians guild or the bar association, but these sort of .coms that get set up basically to get people to come to them, and then there are ads, and they make a little money off each time you go to a page, and and the stupid ad runs. And there's a lot of these sites that just are basically compilers. They take information from here, there, wherever, it all into a more or less properly designed web page, and don't really process the information at all, don't add anything new. I run into this one often when you're looking for information about other colleges or universities. There are all these college search sites. A few of them are longstanding legit organizations like Peterson's, and others are something someone just made up, cribbed a bunch of information and put it out there. So, beware of that. But our main purpose today isn't to go and visit a whole lot of professional association pages. It's to look at just a few of the most important general purpose resources that are out there. And number one on my list, now this is kind of an ascending order of usefulness. So this is number one, arguably the least important of the three, is something known as the Dictionary of Occupational Titles. This is actually put out by the federal government, the Department of Labor. And originally, in fact, I think I still have a copy of the last print edition somewhere. It was a big fat print book. And they actually, after the last full edition came out, put out a little thin appendix, because they were sort of, by the turn of this millennium, they were sort of seeing the writing on the wall that people weren't going to want this book much anymore. So it is now available online. The great thing about it is that it covers virtually any occupation. If the occupation exists, if it's something that there are, 100 people who do that somewhere in America, it's going to be listed. The downside is that it provides very little information, basically like a one short paragraph that says, here's what they do. And here's the website. It's just called occupationalinfo.org. And in fact, I will show you a page of it. Here we go. This is the entry-level spot here. There is, by the way, a complex coding system or numerical system for representing each occupation. And what you're seeing here is the first digit, or of that code number. Each occupation has its own unique code, and it's a terribly complicated system. So all professional, technical, and managerial occupations get lumped in one place. All clerical and sales are another. If it begins with a 2, it's going to be clerical or sales. All agriculture-related things, you start with a 4, and so forth and so on. So this is the complete thing. And, again, if you just click on something, you find that it starts to move you forward. So, let's say that within the agricultural world, I'm interested in forestry occupations. So I can click there, and you have things like tree farming and logging and harvesting except logging, which I'm not quite sure, is that like gathering mushrooms or something, forest conservation occupations. So if we say, I'd like to be in forest conservation, so what might I become? Oh, I could be a fire ranger. Oops, send that away. Stop seeing that ad, I don't care. Well, maybe I'll be I don't think I want to be a smoke jumper. That sounds really scary, but let's look at it. So this is occupation 452.364-014. Don't worry about the system. What do they do? Pretty much what the name suggests. Parachutes from airplane into forest inaccessible by ground to suppress forest fires. Orient self in relation to fire using compass and map, collects supplies and equipment dropped by parachute, fells trees, digs trenches, extinguishes flames. Maypack parachutes. Wow. And then they say a little bit about what you need to get into it. Like, you need to be, I think V means very important to be strong, for example, and so forth. And then you can crosswalk to other related occupations, in this case, forest firefighters. So that gives you the gist of it. Let's go back to contents. We'll just look at one more just briefly. So suppose we went to structural work, and we said, under structural work, painting and plastering. I could become a plasterer. Wow, there's a lot of plastering occupations. I wonder what a lather, that would be lather. Let's do plasterer construction, and wow, a big long description of what plasterers do. And of course, that's making your walls nice and smooth and wonderful again. That's it. So you see, if they don't know anything about an occupation, or very, very little about it, the DOT or occupationalinfo.org will give them that little bit of information they need. Resource number 2 is narrower but deeper in its scope. This is the Occupational Outlook Handbook. Again, another federal government publication. This time it's the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And again, this used to be put out actually every year as a print book. Now, I think you can actually, you can access it as a PDF, as a book, I think, but there's also going to be a web page, obviously. What you have here is a much smaller subset of the available occupations. The Dictionary of Occupational Titles has everything from, largest occupations down to real niche things like crabber or rickshaw driver. Here you have just a much smaller subset of occupations, but they're all relatively big ones that many people are employed in. And the information includes information about what they do, but also important information about things like how many of them are there, is it growing, is it shrinking, how fast, what are the working conditions like, et cetera. And you do have some choices about how to go in and search. So you can say, I only want occupations that are growing. I don't want to get into a field where it's just shrinking and there aren't going to be any jobs in 20 years. You can search by median pay and say, I don't want anything that, where I'm going to earn as an average worker less than, say, $40,000 a year. And you can search by occupational group, and it's that same kind of numerical code that the DOT uses. So again, this is right at the Bureau of Labor Statistics government webpage. So if you just go to bls.gov, you'll probably see the link, but /OOH/ will give you the Occupational Outlook Handbook. And so let's have a look at that. Here we go. And so this, again, you'll notice we have organization of types of occupations. Again, we can sort by pay, required education, whether on-the-job training is a thing, how many new jobs are expected, and what the growth rate is expected to be. Notice those are different, right? Number of new jobs is like absolute, whereas growth rate is relative. So you could have an occupation that's only growing at, let's say, average, say, 3% a year, but there are 200,000 people in the occupation. So that means you're going to have like 6,000 more jobs appearing every year. You could have another that's going to be increasing by 50% a year, they think, but there are only 500 of them. So there will only be 250 jobs appearing. And again, you can go, they have featured occupations. So let's look at the featured occupation of the day: dental and ophthalmic laboratory technicians and other medical appliance technicians. So here you go. You have a little video, which I don't think I want to watch. It looks like some gentleman is doing something to put something useful in the young lady's mouth, better teeth, presumably. And you can look up all these sorts of things. So these sorts of technicians, and these are presumably, again, the people who actually make things like your false teeth or whatnot, on median pay nationwide is just under $40,000 per year. You don't really need a lot of education, high school diploma, presumably some on-the-job training, moderate on-the-job training. There are about 75,000 of these people nationwide, and it's growing at an anticipated annual rate of 12%, which is above the national average, meaning that there should be about 9,000 plus new jobs appearing over the decade following when this was last updated. So that's interesting. Again, now there will be each year about 11,000 openings, because a good deal of that is replacing some of the folks who are leaving the field. You can look up details about what they do, read and follow detailed work orders and prescriptions, bend, form, and shape materials, etc. Something about their work environment. So most of them are either dental or ophthalmic technicians. Most work in manufacturing. There could be some health and safety hazards with certain materials, so you wear protective equipment. They mostly work full-time, schedules may vary. Here's how you become one. See, so your client who is actually intrigued by this can really find out a great deal here. Here's how I can get trained for it. Here's how I can be certified in one of these fields, etc. Pay-wise, you can get more detail here. So the dental and medical appliance ones do a little better than the ophthalmic ones for whatever reason. They also vary pay-wise depending on where they're working. Working in an optometrist's office appears to be the least well-paying one, whereas dentist's offices are pretty good. But of course, that's different things, different occupations. The job outlook, here we go, as cosmetic prosthetics such as veneers and crowns become less expensive, demand will likely increase. So there you go. Accidents and poor oral health will create a need, continue to create a need. So as the population is aging, there will be more demand for dental appliances. You can look this up by state and region if you so wish. That's going to take us outside of here, I believe, but you can actually then ask yourself, or your client can ask, I live in Iowa, I kind of want to stay in Iowa. So how many of these people are there in Iowa? And then you can also look up similar occupations, opticians, orthotists, and prosthetists, and so forth. And if you want more information, you can go to the trade associations. So right here, we have direct links to these organizations. So if you're interested in dental laboratory technology, and here's the people who will potentially certify you in that as you become good at what you do. So I presumably you're all agreeing that this is a very useful site if the occupation you're interested in is one of the ones covered here. And again, that's the limitation to it. Now, resource number 3 is, in my opinion, the most important, the most useful of all, and that's ONET. O*net, O*net. This is a tremendously valuable page to go to because you can actually do searches for occupations using inputs such as the results of an interest inventory you've taken. So if you've completed the strong interest inventory or the self-directed search or the ONAD interest profiler, you have your little interest code, and you can plug that right in. I'll show you that in a moment. Likewise, if you've completed the Minnesota Importance Questionnaire or the Values Work Importance Profiler, rather, from ONET, you can plug in that code. You also can put in abilities. So if you say, well, I'm good at these things, let's enter it that way, etc. Work styles, all sorts of things. You also can search by industry, same as in the Occupational Outlook Handbook or the DOT. You can search by what they call job family. We'll get there. You can look for specifically STEM-related occupations. They may have just taken this out during the previous presidential administration, but you could look for green occupations, so-called. You also can search according to what they call job zones. That's worth going into just for a minute before we visit the ONET site. Job zone refers to just how much schooling I got to get before I can enter that occupation. So, at the lowest level, job zone 1, it's pretty much walk in and say, hi, I'd like to do this. And if they like your look, you're hired. Job zone 2, you typically need a high school diploma before they're really willing to consider you. And there's probably going to be some training involved. Job zone 3, most of these positions are going to require that you have a year or 2 of education beyond your high school diploma. You've gone to a technical school, or you've gone to a community college, or done a couple of years at a straight up 4-year institution, etc. Job zone 4 typically requires a college degree, and job zone 5 typically requires graduate level education or professional school beyond the bachelor's. So you have 5 levels you can look at. Now, look, a lot of your clients are only going to be interested in positions at a couple of these levels, so they might say, like, yeah, I get it. I'm finishing high school, and I get that I might have to do a little bit more. But I don't want to get a 4-year degree. So let's keep it to job zone 3 on down. And 1, those are probably not great jobs. Forget those. Somebody else is going to say, no, I'm a college graduate. I want to see things that college graduates do, or I'm interested in going all the way through and pursuing an advanced degree. So we're going to give it a try, and I'll make up a sample case here, and we'll plug it in. So we'll try first searching by an interest code, and you'll see how this works. And then we'll try searching by a values code. So this is a make-believe client whose interest inventory results show them in the Holland coding system to be an REC, realistic, enterprising, conventional type. And that when they took the work importance profiler, they came up with their top values, top work-related values as achievement, recognition, and support. So back in here, and we go to ONET. Here's the wonderful ONET page. And this is truly a wonderful resource. And it's, I can't say enough about it. So much here. You can, again, search by occupation. It's funny, I guess dental assistant is all the rage today. They had the other dental related thing before. So you can put in whatever occupation you want. You can also use that fancy numerical code if you want. So if you looked it up in the DOT and you have that little code, you can put that code in here. And then you can look for occupations. Yeah, they got rid of green. That may come back. Let's hope. You can search by what they call bright outlook, which is ones that are expected to be growing faster than average, hot technology, go by industry, job family, job zone, et cetera, STEM, et cetera. You can also browse according to these additional features. And I think this is where I want to focus in. So we'll just look at interests and values today. As you see, there are other options we can pursue as well. So I click interests. And a little brief description of the Holland types, which by this point in your training as a career counselor, you know about. So let's just say we hit realistic. Boom. And at this point, it's just anything that's got R in it, or R in the first position, I think. Yeah, so R has to be the only or one of the only things. You'll see that it's organized by job zone. So you're starting off with things that require, little or no training, fast food cook, dishwasher, and the like. Working your way up through things require a bit more, like animal caretakers, bakers, bus drivers. A bit more is required for, say, barbers, electricians, firefighters. Now you're needing some technical training here. College degrees are required for civil engineers, foresters. There you go. A bunch of others, fuel cell engineers, then advanced degrees for things like midwives, animal scientists, etc. Notice when you get to the highest level, there's usually something else before the R, because most purely realistic occupations are more manual. Now, of course, you can put in additional things. So now we're going to add enterprising, and we're going to have only things that have both R and E in them. But E can be first. So you actually have 122 options. And again, at the level where you don't need a lot of training, you've got baristas, amusement park attendants, fishing and hunting workers have a bright outlook. Interesting. A little more is required of restaurant cooks, carpet installers, corrections officers. A lot of 2 levels here. More is required. Again, firefighters are still going to be there, ship engineers, chefs and head cooks, etc. If we add conventional, REC, this is now narrowing it down because we're looking for things that have R, E, and C in it. So there are only 74 occupations. Now, again, I can limit this by job zone. So if I have a person who's saying, I only want stuff I can do, can I get both at once? No. With my high school diploma, well, there's 38. There's quite a few options here. I could be a butcher. I could be a bridge tender, though I don't think there are all that many of those. Transportation security screener, motorboat operator, security guard, data entry keyer, file clerk, etc. If I'm willing to do a bit of trade school, 21 occupations, or community college or something, barbers, captains, mates, and pilots of water vessels. This is starting to sound pretty good, especially on a hot summer day. Dispensing opticians, etc. If I say, I'm going to be a college graduate, things open up like construction manager, biofuels production manager. Wow, online merchants. If I go all the way up to 5, there aren't any. So you see, again, realistic occupations tend to load, relatively low. If we'd put investigative in there instead, just to give you a sense of something different, say we had IE, let's make it IER, and we said, okay, I want 5s, you do get some things because the investigative occupations tend to require more education. Whereas, again, not much there. So that's browsing by interests. If we did it by values, we had said that achievement was this person's number 1. And so here's 85 that have achievement in them, again, at all job zones. Notice the job to bakers has come up in both lists, hasn't it? Haven't looked carefully at everything. Fashion designers pops up, forest fire inspectors pops up, police and sheriff patrol officers pops up, but now we're going to add the others. So achievement and recognition, and we went from 85 to 112 occupations. But everything has to have these both in it. And now if we also add support, that's going to narrow it down. Again, this is based on the Minnesota system here. So yeah, not much matches that combination. So it says, go back to your first two, because the only ones that have all three of those seem to be transportation engineers, food scientists, and nuclear engineers. Now, if we had something else here, like you said, working conditions, we get 22. So there's a good number here. Now, usually you're probably having your client do one or the other, an interest inventory or a value survey. If, of course, they do both, and the ONET ones, after all, are free and cheap, free and short. Of course, they're cheap, they're free and brief. Then you could also look for things that appear on both lists, right? So for the made up person I had, if you left out the support and just had achievement recognition, there were a few things such as Baker that appeared on both lists. So you'd say, you might find that work interesting, and you might also find that it fulfills what you're looking for to get out of your work, your job as well. That would be very nice. Okay, and that is it. I don't think there's anything more we need to worry about here. Obviously, there's a huge amount that one can investigate on behalf of any given client. Equally important, we can teach our clients how to do it for themselves and find out more and more, and maybe even have them report back to us. It's a good little homework assignment to keep them engaged in the career search process. That said, good day to you all, and we'll see you for another episode soon.